Crop circles, patterns in fields which can appear overnight and without warning.
There's clearly intelligence behind crop circles. That's not the question. The question is, whose intelligence is it?
What are they, why are they there, and what could they possibly signify? And do they come from other worlds?
There are, without a doubt, lots of UFO sightings that take place.
Despite the admissions of hoaxers that the formulations are man-made, many still believe that they are signals from extraterrestrials.
To us, it looks like a field, but underneath, there's an interdimensional gate.
So are they caused by the weather, by UFOs, or by humans? Either way, they are unexplained. Crop circles. They appear abruptly in rural areas with no explanation behind them.
Crop circles are designs in grains, often wheat or barley, that appear in fields mysteriously. They range in complexity from very simple, small circles to really complex, amazing geometric patterns.
It's like almost woven like stitching or a cloth, or you'll have maybe one or two little strands just sitting there, and then there'll be a spiral around them.
Regardless of the specific design or pattern, which emerge over time, there's a handful of characteristics common to most crop circles. One is that most of them are circles, or involve circles. There are more complex ones. There's straight lines, there's triangles, but the vast majority of them are in fact circles.
Just from a simple artistic look and feel, it's wonderful to see these designs. So on that level alone, it provides a wonderful spiritual enhancement of amazement.
These spectacular designs in fields of crops are artistic, dramatic, and often geometrically precise. But are they the work of humans, or are they the marks of visitors from other planets?
People have always tried to find physical evidence that flying saucers and UFOs have been here. And naturally, when people see these amazing formations in the crops, people will associate those with something supernatural and something that came from the sky. They look like the classic George Adamski flying saucer from the 1950s.
Crop circles are surrounded by confusion, just like the alien spaceships of the mid-20th century.
It's quite interesting, really, to kind of hark back to the original time when the word flying saucer entered the language, because this was back in 1947, when Kenneth Arnold saw these mysterious craft flying at amazing speeds, doing amazing maneuvers. And when he reported this to the press, he said that the motion was like a saucer skipping across a lake. But he wasn't talking about the shape of the craft, he was talking about the motion. And yet that phrase flying saucer, the media loved it. And then afterwards, people actually reported seeing circular craft, whereas the craft that Kenneth Arnold had seen were actually more like boomerangs. But that became forgotten, and now everybody sees flying saucers.
Some historians claim that the phenomena have been appearing for centuries. But have they?
It's a tough question to answer, how long have crop circles been with us, because it really depends on how you look at it. There's famously a woodcut from the year 1678.
The legend is that a farmer was arguing with one of his helpers who wanted more money to harvest the field, and there was a big fight, and the farmer said, "I'd rather pay the devil himself to mow my field than to pay you to do it." Sure enough, the next morning, the oats were cut, and it was the devil himself. If you look at the woodcut, the image depicts the devil, Satan himself, with a scythe cutting the oats.
So when did they first appear? As far as we know, the first known circles of the modern age were seen in Australia, circular formations in swamp reeds.
A farmer saw a UFO shooting up into the sky.
His name was George Pedley.
He claimed to have heard what he thought was a hissing sound. In the aftermath of that, he went over to the area where he believed he heard the sound come from and found this perfectly circular formation, about 9 meters or 30 feet in diameter. It's quite large. when you really think about this, a very significant size. And that became known as the Tully Saucer Circle, and actually further investigation by Pedley and other people found that there were actually a series of these. There were a number of circular formations, mostly smaller than the original one. The RAAF, the Royal Australian Air Force, actually did investigate this. They didn't come up with any explanation as to what would have caused this, but you get the idea that they were sort of nonchalant in their approach to this, saying, well, this kind of thing has happened before during the wet season.
But what can explain the Australian circles?
There have been a variety of explanations that have been offered to explain the Tully saucer nest, none of which really persuaded too many people. Then you've got theories like whirlwinds or vortices of some sort, some kind of natural, maybe wind formation. Also, really, that's a bit of a stretch, it seems to me, to more mechanistic explanations, as in someone's technology, whether flying saucers, which that's an easy one to see why, since you have the witness having seen one. We don't really have a simple explanation, a conventional explanation, I should say, that everyone can agree with.
The Tully saucer nest aside, these extraordinary happenings only really came to public attention in the second half of the 20th century.
Crop circles really genuinely began in the 1970s. There's others elsewhere in Europe, but for the most part, it's as British as tea.
Crop circles are a very important part of British culture, and especially this area. I mean, Wiltshire is like crop circle country.
By the mid and late 1980s, they started to become really complex. And that's when this whole phenomenon really became very, very interesting to follow. You could argue for kind of a vortex theory, sort of a naturalistic Earth phenomenon where these things would somehow be created, and some people were very drawn to that. The problem with that theory became very evident once you start seeing like 4 circles in a perfect pattern, and then with lines connecting them.
Then things really started to take off.
Suddenly there was a rectangular crop circle. It's not a crop circle, but you know, it was like the face of Mars. And then suddenly there was another one in the same field that looked like a message sent out in space. And you got very intricate ones with amazing kind of geometry behind it.
And also becoming enormous in size. And then you start getting even very more sophisticated mathematical expressions of these. So obviously the vortex explanation really kind of fell apart at that point.
The crop circles largely appeared close to sites with spiritual connections.
The large number of them take place in the region around Wiltshire, where you've got Stonehenge, where you've got a lot of other very interesting ancient evidences of early Celtic and pre-Celtic culture. So the question is that important? And then there's a theory of ley lines, and whether or not that's really a legitimate connection is something that no one's really been able to figure this out.
But how can these extraordinary designs appear, seemingly out of nowhere? Are they caused by extraterrestrial beings and miraculous occurrences? Or are they human hoaxes?
It just seemed to appear instantly out of nowhere in broad daylight.
Is this really happening?
Crop circles in the southwest of the United Kingdom have become a part of spiritual folklore, as well as a manifestation, many believe, of the intervention of alien beings. For Monique Klinkenberg, the circles have become almost an obsession.
I used to do reconnaissance flights in the early morning to find if there are any new ones. My daughter was with me and she loves to fly. And she said, "Mommy, can I fly for you?" I said, "Of course, here's the camera and blah, blah, blah." So she went in and she came back and she said, "There were 2 on each side of the road." I said, "Huh?" And we looked at the picture and it was like quite amazing on floor level, you know, all the circles and lines. But what happened in the end, that if you put those two circles on top of each other, all the lines and all the dots, they make together a face. Can you imagine how do you do that? One here, one there, creating a face, which some people say it is the face of Jesus. And it also looked like the Shroud of Turin. It was just a stunning event. One of those things I will never ever forget.
Many others had discovered circles in fields in the past, but in 1991, two Englishmen rocked the worlds of ufologists and paranormal experts alike. Their names were Doug Bauer and Dave Chorley.
Bauer and Chorley, more commonly known as Doug and Dave, are two self-confessed hoaxers who claim that they were responsible for pretty much all of the early crop circles reported in Wiltshire for the first few years, before it really caught on, and then lots of other people started making them.
It just so happens that circles are the easiest patterns for hoaxers to make. It's much more difficult to make lines and triangles than it is to make actual circles.
And they produced these mysterious circles that kind of got people talking.
Every week they went out. Before they went home, they created flying saucer landing sites in the swirl patterns in the crops. Nothing elaborate, just simple circles. And they did this for a number of years, and no one noticed. And they were about to give up, and suddenly they saw a story in the local newspaper. Someone had finally spotted these mysterious swirls in the crops and took a photograph of them, and it got into the local newspaper. That came to the attention of ufologists, and then the rest is history.
If crop circles are merely hoaxes, creations of humans, how are they made?
They got the idea from the original reports from Australia and thought, wouldn't it be fun to have a go at that? So they went out into fields at night with planks and string.
The only explanation that we know for a fact is true is that humans make crop circles. Whether or not aliens also make crop circles, whether or not unknown energies also do them, the only known proven creator of crop circles is humans. It's certainly true that the more complex crop circles can be difficult to do because, of course, you're in a field. There's lots of complicated ones, but making a basic, simple crop circle, even a couple patterns, is not that hard to do. In fact, I've done it. I've made several crop circles, and it's fun. It's a bit mischievous. It's cool when you see your work because you can photograph it, and if you want to, you can sort of do your work and then wait a couple days and see if the locals find it. And if so, you can watch the news and say, oh, I did that, because who wouldn't want to do that? Because people are pranksters.
But this simple answer is surely debunked by the Julia set, an extraordinary and huge field-based creation.
The Julia set crop circle is an amazing event, and of course it made international history.
In my view, it's one of the most astonishing and actually really inexplicable crop circle formations of all. I've never heard of a conventional explanation for this one. In the first place, it's immensely large. So it's roughly 3 football fields in length. I think something like over 900 feet long. It's comprised of 149 distinct circles that are in an incredibly complex, precisely laid down formation. And it's absolutely stunningly beautiful. What's also amazing about it is how it appears to have come into being.
But what is really extraordinary about the Julia set was the speed at which it appeared.
So what happened was a pilot flew over, then on the way back, roughly sometime later, there's that crop circle. And that was the amazing thing about that crop circle. It just seemed to appear instantly out of nowhere in broad daylight.
So how could it have been created?
That's a really legit question. You've got something that's of that immensity and that precision in the middle of the day. There's no one who's ever claimed this one. It's like you've got a secret team of Leonardo da Vinci's going out into the field there covertly, like spies, to create this incredible, massive structure, and without being seen in the middle of day. I don't know how you explain that.
And in the case of the Mandelbrot set, an even more complex formulation was created.
It was one of these absolutely astonishing circle formations that were just so magnificent. And the people who were looking at crop circles said, well, now explain this.
But Doug Bauer and Dave Chorley soon claimed responsibility for both.
These two retired guys said, oh no, we did them all. We started the whole thing. And then they proceeded to give a demonstration. So I think when you're looking at disinformation, you really have to look at those two, and you have to look at all of the media support as well to throw cold water on these cases.
One of the more bizarre theories is that humans are being used to create the circles and that they are doing so subconsciously.
This gets into human consciousness, and then somebody stomps it around and makes a crop circle. It's not the physicality of how they're made. In some respects, that's very interesting. There are balls of light seen. There's all these kinds of things being seen, which would appear to make a formation. There's a video, a very famous video of an orb flying around, appearing to make a crop circle. But that's been proved to be a fake. So there's an awful lot of skullduggery involved, and there's an awful lot of military intelligence involved from different countries, and there's an awful lot of attention on something which is just a simple bunch of hoaxers having a laugh.
But could the emergence of crop circles have any connection with pagan sites and some of the best-known prehistoric monuments on the planet? While evidence that crop circles are man-made is compelling, their sheer size and the speed with which they have appeared lead some to believe that they have to be extraterrestrial in origin. One theory is that the preponderance of circles in the Wiltshire area of the UK is driven by the region's ancient pagan sites, making it a center of paranormal activity.
Some of these crop circles have been made specifically because there are existing earth energies in a given area. There are ley lines going all over these places. There are standing stones which have, these megaliths have got electrical energetic properties. The scientists have looked at the energy fields, the electric static energy field in some of these stones are amazing. Some of these stones re-radiate. They are electrical transmission devices.
And some believe many prehistoric mounds are capable of interacting with the circles.
Silbury Hill is a classic example. It's a multi-layered insulation and conductive layered technical energy field device. This is a mini Silbury Hill. This is something full of resin and conductive materials, and this will produce an energy field. So these devices are electrical field devices. They're interdimensional field devices.
Another theory is that crop circles were messages sent by extraterrestrials. But why have they only started appearing over the last few decades?
Human beings now have absolutely, utterly transformed our civilization and indeed the whole face of this planet. We have to keep in mind that for thousands and thousands of years, our society was essentially the same thing. It was horses pulling wooden carts. You could argue we were not as interesting for all that period of time. But suddenly in the last century, we really take off with science and industry. That's a fact. And so if there's any other observing intelligence that can see that, they would know right now is the time to be watching this civilization. It wouldn't surprise me in the least that you would have a greater level of interactivity from an observing intelligence. And I think personally that is exactly what we are seeing in the context of the rest of what we call the UFO phenomenon. And I wouldn't rule it out in the crop circle phenomenon either.
So is the scientific consensus on crop circles that they are constructed by human beings as hoaxes? Or are they the creations of alien beings?
There are still people out there making these patterns And I think with some justification, seeing it as kind of public art.
The only danger that I see are the people that have, in some cases, spent decades of their lives researching this and genuinely believe that there's some hidden mystery that we're not getting.
I think we're all best served by dialing down the fanaticism, dialing down the certainty, and being willing to listen to opposing or alternate points of view. We can still learn from those that we disagree with on this matter.
All the other questions are really sort of irrelevant. We're just looking at something beautiful and amazing, and it's just wonderful to be able to do it out in the countryside, in the open air.
There could be a meaning if it's extraterrestrial, showing we are there. Or could be comfort for people who lost their loved ones. Maybe it's just simply part of nature. I don't know, but I just love it.
Amersham, a small town about 30 miles north of London, England, is reputed to be the most haunted town in the world. Ghosts appear, furniture moves, and strange things happen all the time.
I've never seen anything like that. I mean, I've seen things and I've experienced things, but I've never seen someone actually walk through a door.
Can a town literally be haunted by ghosts? Is it just a story to draw in tourists, or simply a case of mass hysteria? Either way, it remains unexplained.
I didn't actually believe in any of it until I actually started working here.
In this sleepy village, tucked away in rural Buckinghamshire north of London, ghosts appear, tables move, and the spirits are everywhere. It appears there never was a time when Amersham wasn't haunted.
I think the most significant thing about Amersham is that the history of the old town has been preserved. It was a major coaching in between trade routes from City of London up to major market towns such as Aylesbury and Buckingham. It would be one day's travel on horse and cart from City of London to as far as Amersham, and a good coach driver would not have worked his horse any more than that. So you had a huge volume of people staying in old Amersham, travellers going north and south if they were coming back the other way. And each of the coaching inns, the majority of them, are still in place today as pubs and restaurants.
Those travelers appear to have made their mark. It's in those houses and restaurants that strange things happen. Amersham is populated by ghosts.
Amersham benefits from having a lot of ghosts and a whole variety of ghosts. So typically when you're looking at a location, you might have a white lady, you might have a few objects that are moving. Amersham benefits from having so many different locations where ghosts are reported that you've got a white lady, a grey lady, a black lady, a green lady. You've got poltergeist type activity, things moving, that sort of thing. You've got people sensing a presence. You've got people having electric shocks, for example, in one of the locations. So a whole variety of phenomena.
The Crown Inn has stood since the 1400s, when it was a popular coach inn for merchants traveling to and from London. It still welcomes weary travelers in for a warm meal and a warm bed, but it's also the hub for ghostly activity in the town. Staff and guests have reported unexplained activity and things that go bump in the night. And it's particularly prevalent in one room.
People who have stayed in room 16 of the Crown have reported being interfered with during the night. Men have found that their sheets are being tucked in while they're lying in bed. Their suitcase might be unpacked or repacked depending on how they left it.
And like all paranormal activity, it's something hard to comprehend until you experience it.
I didn't actually believe in any of it until I actually started working here. In room 16, I was going into the room to do a room check for a guest with one of my colleagues who used to work here. As we were leaving the room, we turned around again and we saw the outline of an old man, like a silver outline of an old man in the rocking chair, and it was just moving by itself. I had another friend who I actually work with. She has also seen the same outline of the man in the rocking chair in room 16 at the Crown Hotel as well. I've also had an experience in room 12, and I was showing a guest some of the rooms they wanted to see, and they wanted to see this room because they've heard about it before. So I showed them the room. As we walked in, the door slammed by itself. There was no windows open because it was during the winter time, and there was a handprint on the bed sheets as if someone had just been in there and pressed their hand down on the sheets. But I was the only receptionist working at that time, and obviously I'm the only one who has the keys to the rooms, and no one was staying in that room either. So the guest did get a little bit creeped out, but she found it quite fascinating anyway.
But the ghosts of the Crown don't confine themselves to the guests' bedrooms.
I've had another experience where I was outside in the courtyard area of the Crown Hotel. I was just cleaning some mugs and things up, and I looked up, and from one of the windows I saw an older lady, but she didn't look like she was from this time. As you do, you look twice and she disappeared. And as I opened the door, I felt a really cold breeze, and I just didn't think anything of it. I just thought because it's a little bit lower down in the hotel that that's where the breeze was coming from. As I shut the door to the cupboard to get the ironing board out, I saw the same older lady. I saw her walking through the hallway. She turned to room 17 and just walked through the door, which did creep me out a lot because I've never seen anything like that. I mean, I've seen things and I've experienced things, but I've never seen someone actually walk through a door. And then that was when I heard stories about, they call her the Grey Lady, who walks the halls from room 17 to room 21. And we've had a few guests who have said that she will unpack their suitcases, or she will pack their clothes back into their suitcases because she doesn't like guests being in them rooms.
But the Crown Inn is not unique in Amersham. It may not even be the most haunted. Its sister pub, the King's Arms, has also reported spectral visitors, and many notables, including politicians and judges.
It's said that hanging Judge Jeffreys would often visit the place. Now, he was responsible for sending hundreds and hundreds of people to the hangman, a very brutal man.
Could it be possible that those he sent to the gallows continue to come back to take their revenge as ghosts on the modern world?
It's no surprise that a lot of people have witnessed spirit phenomena inside the King's Arms Hotel. It's said that the staff at night try to get the last drinker out of the place, only to realise it's not a person, it's some spirit entity who just vanishes before their eyes.
One visitor has heard the sound of horses at night.
And she's gone outside for some fresh air, and she said that she's heard footsteps and what sounds like horses in a cart coming down the archway. It used to be a coaching inn, so it would make sense if she did hear horses in a cart coming down through the archway area.
But how does any of this make sense? How can people from another time and another place haunt today's patrons? And why in Amersham? And why in public houses and inns? The stories appear to be everywhere. On the edge of town, the Checkers Inn reports multiple ghostly sightings. It's a structure which dates from the 1500s.
That was originally built in the year 1450. It's quite possible that there was an older alehouse on the site as well. Obviously, with that level of history, there's been thousands upon thousands of different people visiting the place, staying in the place, but it's most famous for being the place where the Amersham martyrs, the Lollards, were imprisoned.
Lollards denounced the wealth of the church and did not believe that bread and wine changed into the body and blood of Christ at communion. Their main demand was to read the Bible in English. Also known as the Amersham Martyrs, they were burned to death at the stake. So do the martyrs consistently return to Amersham?
And the Checkers pub is now said to be haunted by between 9 and 12 different ghost entities.
One is a man, and the assumption is that this was one of the guards, possibly a Lollard sympathiser, because actually in the first trials in 1511, about 60 people were charged with heresy. The second trials in 1521, 200 people were charged with heresy.
Heresy, or espousing a contrary belief to those of the Church, was serious business in the late Middle Ages. The punishment was also serious, ranging from whipping or stoning to a death sentence. Burning at the stake was a favored form of execution. So could the guard scene at Amersham have been one of those executed?
The population was only 900 people, so that's almost a quarter of the population. So it's very likely that the guard might well have been a Lollard sympathiser, and ever since then his soul has not been able to rest.
In the tiny rural English town of Amersham, spirits roam in various locations. How can this be explained? Dr. Kieran O'Keefe is a local parapsychologist.
Parapsychology, very broadly, is the scientific study of the paranormal. But if we went into detail in terms of what parapsychology is, it would be studying a variety of phenomena, which includes ESP, so things like telepathy, precognition, clairvoyance, but also PK, the ability to maneuver or bend objects with your mind, and then survival. So survival research is about investigating claims that prove that we survive after death, so things like ghosts, poltergeist, and mediumship.
Dr. O'Keefe has taken a keen interest in Britain's most haunted town.
In terms of my interest in Amersham, that all started because I grew up in High Wycombe as a boy. I investigated a couple of locations around here, so for example Hellfire Caves, but also as an investigator, even as a teenager, I was interested in any ghost stories from the surrounding area, and Amersham just leaped out of the page.
For years, he'd heard about the strange things which happened in the village.
I'd heard about the Checkers Inn, Crown Hotel, all of these sorts of areas, and actually even just walking along the road in Old Amersham, it has that feel like you're stepping back into history. So I was just fascinated by it from a very early age.
Dr. O'Keefe is not the only one to take interest in Amersham's otherworldly entities. The town has also come to the attention of another local paranormal investigator.
My mother was a psychic medium, and I grew up with that kind of thing, spiritualism and tales of spirits all around.
When it came to Amersham, he had a number of objectives.
My main interest was actually finding out what the cause of paranormal phenomena was. Was it in fact something innocent, something quite naturally explainable, or were we dealing with some other kind of entity or intelligence beyond our own realm?
So if they're so threatening, so scary, why do people want to visit places like Amersham?
I think one of the most fascinating things for people in the modern day is the immersive aspect of visiting these places that are reputedly haunted. Many of them have not changed their features since the Tudor period, or certainly for several hundred years. They can actually visit these places and feel immersed in what the place would have looked like those hundreds of years ago. They can actually feel the vibe, feel the essence of what long lost relatives from hundreds of years before would have perceived in that area. Add to that the fascination people have with horrible history and ghost stories. It all creates the perfect environment for people to visit living history.
But you don't have to go back hundreds of years to feel the spirits which moved around Amersham. Many famous and notorious people from the recent past are believed to inhabit the area still. The town of Amersham might be famed for its ghostly figures and happenings which have tormented visitors, but many of its residents have also witnessed paranormal activity throughout the day and in the early hours of the morning.
There were a number of different reports of individuals who would wake up at 4, 5 o'clock in the morning and they'd feel like they'd had an electric shock. They were kind of jolted out of bed. And then if you look at some of the accounts in details, some of them then reported associated ghostly activity with that experience. Now, we know in parapsychology that there's this state between sleeping and waking. It's called the hypnopompic state. It's this state where you mix dream imagery or dream experiences with reality. And the problem with a lot of the experiences in Amersham, the Crown Hotel, Chequers Inn, Woodrow House as well, is that you've got a lot of the experiences happening at night. When people are having these hypnopompic type experiences, assuming that the experience they're having is real when actually it's part of their dream imagery. Or, from a very simple psychological point of view, a lot of people are tired at night, and that can affect our perception in such a way that we think we're having a ghostly experience when in fact we're not.
Amersham's graveyard does hold the body of one spirit that deserves to be restless. In the graveyard of St. Mary's Church lies the body of Ruth Ellis.
She was born in Wales. She came from a large family. She then moved to London with her family. She dropped out of school quite young, just 14. At 17, she found herself working in nightclubs as a hostess, and then she fell into prostitution. She fell on hard times, and that's where the story begins.
But it was her involvement with her lover that was to make her infamous in British history.
While she was managing a club, she met David Blakely, who was an upper-class racing driver. And remember, in Great Britain, class and class structure is a huge thing. Both of them immediately started to like each other very, very much. But their relationship was a messy one. David moved in with Ruth. He was actually engaged to someone else. Ruth was carrying on many affairs. So it was a very difficult relationship, and there was a lot of people involved.
The tawdry affair came to a tragic conclusion.
So it was Easter Sunday 1955 where Ruth wanted to get her revenge on David. She tracked him down outside a friend's house and she shot him with a revolver up to 6 times. And she waited, she actually stood there and waited for the police to arrive.
Ruth Ellis was tried for David Blakely's murder. She was found guilty.
That meant death, that meant hanging, that meant execution.
Ruth Ellis was the last woman to be executed in the UK. She was buried in Holloway Prison because the condemned would not receive a good Christian burial. Of course, times and attitudes changed. When Holloway Prison was being extended, they were looking for places to bury the people that were in the graveyard there. St. Mary's Church in Amersham agreed to take the body of Ruth Ellis.
There was more tragedy to follow.
Unfortunately, in the early 80s, her son destroyed the headstone before committing suicide. And the priest at the church has left her grave unmarked, although a few locals do know which is her grave.
There are those who suggest the crime wasn't as black and white as it appeared.
The case of Ruth Ellis is a fascinating one. For many years, people believed it to be a cut and dried case. She killed her lover and was discovered holding, literally, the smoking gun. When it went to court, she pleaded guilty, and for several decades people believed that there was no more interest in the case. However, in more modern times, people with firearms experience, whether they be police officers or from the military, have looked into the case and found or believed that a very small, petite, diminutive woman like Ruth Ellis could not have used the gun required, the calibre of the gun required, to have inflicted the shots on David Blakely with the level of accuracy that was.
And now, Ruth Ellis is believed to haunt Amersham.
One of my friends said that she definitely saw Ruth Ellis's ghost in the Amersham cemetery because there's a lot of maps in Old Amersham, a lot of guides that do explain about Ruth Ellis. And she decided that she wanted to go and have a look because it is an unmarked grave. So she decided that she would go and have a look for it, and she saw an older lady standing by an unmarked grave which just had a broken headstone and a few flowers by it. So she decided to walk up to the gravesite and the lady just disappeared in front of her. So she was really sort of worried and confused as to what that was about, but she said to me that she was determined that she did see Ruth Ellis's ghost.
Could Amersham's dark history be the reason it's haunted? When such a tragedy occurs, is it possible that it makes an indelible mark on the location? Paranormal investigators call it the stone tape theory.
The stone tape theory suggests that the emotion or action of an event somehow remains embedded in the fabric of a place, and it replays itself to people of a certain sensitivity under certain conditions, almost like a visual echo of the past. Rather than being a spirit entity, such as humans who pass over and then come back, it's believed that this is somehow just an anomaly in the time-space continuum. Of course, the power of suggestion is absolutely huge, and of course a lot of people identify with Ruth Ellison and her plight. She was in a very abusive relationship, so a lot of people did feel a great deal of sympathy towards her. And also with the Amersham martyrs, people who love God, they worship God, they love Jesus, they love the church, they just wanted the right to read the Bible in their native tongue. So all these very sad stories do quite, they play on the conscience of people visiting the area, and could explain why people perceive some of the paranormal activity.
I'm not afraid to come to work. I mean, I absolutely love my job. I love working at the Crown Hotel and the King's Arms Hotel. I'm not afraid if there are supernatural things that happen here, because it's not the only place in Old Amersham that it does happen. To work here, it actually makes it a little bit more exciting to be able to tell other people my experiences that I have encountered, and maybe if they're more open-minded like me, then they would experience the same.
I absolutely believe in ghosts, but I think we need to do a lot more research into what constitutes a ghost. Is it a stone tape theory kind of phenomena, or is it spirits from heaven coming back to visit us, or maybe they need help getting to heaven? Or is it literally just some kind of hallucination that's caused by other factors?
I always get asked, do I believe in ghosts? As a scientist, it's not about belief. We have to go into cases trying to remain as objective as possible. If we go into a case believing it's a ghost, then we're bringing in subjective bias. We're potentially biasing how we look at the evidence. So we've always got to remain objective and not let belief cloud our judgment.